All right. Nigel Eccles, man, welcome to the podcast. How you
Oh,
doing?
thanks for having me on. That's great.
Yeah, cool. I think if I'm not mistaken, you're from the UK.
I am Northern Ireland originally.
Okay. Well, hey, we might have. I have my last name's Degnan, so it's
You've got an ancestor probably from our shores.
yes, definitely. And my family came over from there at the turn of the last century.
Right,
So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're
No, we Ireland's famous for the number of people who left more than the people who stayed. We actually have a museum to the Irish Americans and the people who left. So yeah, we've definitely gifted the world a lot of immigrants, including myself. I
yeah.
only moved to the US about 3 years ago.
All right. So where do you? So you're not in Ireland now?
Nope. No, I live in New York, just
Okay, good.
about 40 minutes north of the city.
Yeah, I wondered, since we're recording at 3 in the afternoon, I thought, well, doesn't
Yes.
this guy have anything better to do at night on a Friday night,
Honestly, looking at the weather in Scotland, which I moved from, honestly, I wouldn't.
Oh,
it's
that's funny.
it's a torrential
Yeah.
downpour at the moment. But no, I moved here 3 years or 5 years ago. We moved. My last company moved our headquarters. This is Fanduel to New York, and then I moved with.
Yeah, so FanDuel, that's one that,
Mhm.
it's kind of like the brand name of
Yes,
fantasy sports betting. And
yes, absolutely.
it's not something I actually take part in because I'm just
Mhm.
not that smart when it comes to sports.
No,
Kind of
that's
like,
smart. Not
well,
smart is when you use it, you don't understand it.
yeah, well, that would be me with crypto and stocks. So
Right. Yes. Yeah, I play that game.
yeah, and I'm not very good at it, but um, you know, it just seems interesting to me.
Mhm.
You must be a serial entrepreneur or something.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny when you start out in your entrepreneurial journey, you aspire to be called an entrepreneur, and then when you do start a company, you realize that the next aspiration is to be to have an adjective to that. You basically want to be a successful entrepreneur, and then but the ultimate you aim to get is like successful serial entrepreneur. That's what you kind of aim for. And like I've obviously had one major success, and I'm working on a few more. But yeah, I kind of have in the blood now. I just couldn't imagine doing anything different. I started my current company, Flick, almost immediately after I left my last job. So I didn't really take much of a break.
So now I did just a little bit of research on you, and
Mm-hmm.
I wish I'd have had more time, but I was happy to come across a quick YouTube of someone interviewing you,
Mm-hmm.
and it was about your other venture, Starstock.
Mm-hmm. Starstock, yes.
Now, is that under Flick?
Oh no, that's a totally separate company. So Starstock is a really interesting business. Well, a lot of my businesses, what you'll see is that there's always a kind of an element of creating marketplaces. I've always been fascinated by consumer marketplaces and giving people the ability to trade things. And Starstock came around about 2 years ago. Two of my friends were into sports trading cards, and I actually knew very little about the market to the extent that I didn't know that people still bought and sold them. And I was fascinated that that sports cards were a proxy for the athlete. And so if you had a generational talent like Zion, that card would be hugely valuable. When a player, I don't know, tears his ACL, you can see the card value drop by 50%. And I thought this was really fascinating. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. I want to play this game. And so when I got into it and started buying and selling cards on eBay, I was just stunned at how painful it was, and having to go to the post office and buy bubble wrap and buy cards, and turned out they were damaged, or that they weren't, the grade that the seller said they were. And so what we figured out, I said, well, why don't we take what happens on eBay and make it a much better buyer experience? Because what we're going to do is we're going to take all the cards and put them in a vault, and people can trade those cards kind of like you would trade an NFT. The cards, those stay in the vault. So I could sell you a card, you would take ownership, but the card would stay in the vault. And then you could see if that player would perform really well, like say Otani this baseball season, you then could flip that card for 2x several months later.
That's amazing. And that's kind of like a real life NFT in a small
Yes.
way.
Yeah, it is. It's like an NFT, although you can redeem that card for the actual physical card that's in the vault. We have about 1.3 million cards now in the vault, covering tens of hundreds of thousands of different players. And so, whether it's an Otani or a Trout or a Kobe or a LeBron, you can trade that player in effect.
Okay, so how far do they go back? Like, what are some of the older cards?
Yeah, so we initially focused only on rookies of current athletes, and so up until very recently, I think our oldest card would have been who's still in the league, a LeBron or a Brady, and then much more recently, we've started to add vintage. So
Okay.
you go back to like Michael Jordan or someone like that.
Yeah. I just inherited like a few boxes of cards,
Hmm.
old ones, some from the 50s and 60s.
Oh, yeah, that
And,
could be very interesting.
and that happened right about the time that I got involved with BitClout. And on
Hmm.
top of all the other things I'm doing, I'm like, when in the world am I going to have time to try to do this? Because I agreed with my mother-in-law who gave it to us that I would help my kids to market
Yeah,
those and sell them and help with their college,
yeah.
all that good stuff. And I look
Hmm.
at it every once in a while, I see these boxes and go, when am I ever going to get to that?
Yeah.
Because it's so much. But now, because you're telling me this, and I'm thinking, I'll just send these guys the boxes and they can sell them.
Yeah, so we currently do wax, which is called, if it's a sealed box, we do wax. Actually, it's a new category. I don't think we've done a lot yet, would be vintage wax.
Hmm. Okay.
So
You're kind of like
definitely, it's a
the eBay of rookie cards,
yeah,
huh?
yeah, but we're only do sports cards.
Right.
And one of the things that we get, like the advantage of being in a vault, is that you have instant ownership. You also don't pay sales tax if you keep the card in the vault. So in New York, I would pay 9%, but if I buy on Starstock, because that card is New Hampshire, there's no sales tax. So that's another advantage. But the other thing that we do is we track all the prices of all the card sales. So if I were to go in and I were to say, what price should I don't know, a Tatis Tops PSA 10 go for? Well, eBay's not very helpful at finding out, but I could immediately go into Starstock and go, that's a $240 card. The last 10 cards sold for between 240 and 260.
So I'm looking at this earlier and I
Mm-hmm.
thought, wow, I can definitely see. I was trying to put myself in your mind, having never met
Mm-hmm.
you, and I'm thinking, what must have gone through your mind when you saw BitClout and
Mm-hmm.
how it related to what you're doing here?
Yeah, totally. You ever see that little emoji with the head exploding?
Yeah.
That was it. That's the only way to describe it. Because with Flick, which is sort of my and the business that we're working on is developing this BitLight application. We spent really the last 3 years working with creators, trying to understand, trying to help them grow their audiences and monetize it. And we found it to be a very, very, very hard problem. And whenever we discovered BitClout 2 months ago, we were like, wow, they have solved this. They have created a way for creators to really own their own profile and to give them a way to market something to their fans. It gives their fans a way to buy into them, and then in return to give some exclusive rewards to those top fans. And so that was just mind blowing to me.
So how do you what was the extension of Starstock to BitClout in your mind?
Oh, so Starstock separate. Starstock has not. We definitely are interested in Starstock connecting with BitCloud, but where we are working, the business that I'm on that is working on BitCloud is actually called a company called Flick.
No, I'm aware of that, and I definitely
Uh-huh.
want to talk very
Yeah, yeah,
quickly about that. But I see what you're doing here with this
uh-huh.
sports trading,
Yeah, yeah.
and in my mind goes to, at what point will we see an interface where there's creators being traded in a
Hmm.
platform like this, where you
Well,
have metrics that you show on screen like this?
yeah. Well, so yeah, obviously creators are already being traded on BitCloud. The weird thing though is that today they're bought and sold off a bonding curve. The interesting one then on BitClout is when they're bought and sold on a secondary market. And so that means like creators could sell without, affecting their price. And so that's certainly where our mind goes to, that, imagine, actually if you scroll up, if you click on any of those ones you're looking at, you can actually look at a price curve if you're logged in. You can scroll to the bottom, you can see it. You're not. Well, you can see a price history of that one. And so that's something that would be really, and you can see that today on like BitClout Signal, but that's a product that really makes a lot of sense to build on BitClout.
Yeah. All right. So then Flick, how did that start? Because it was before BitClout.
Yeah. So we started Flick about 3 years ago. And like I said, I came out with Fanduel, and we realized we built a valuable platform out of taking this niche interest, which was fantasy sports, building a community around it and improving on the product. And so we said, okay, and we actually created professionals out of people who played fantasy sports professionally. And I thought that was really fascinating. I said, well, could we do that in other verticals? We could do this to other influencers. And we said, well, we need to help them create community, and we need to find a way to monetize. And so we actually were very good on the community side. So we created a live chat platform. And so we had a lot of podcasters came on, and they sort of had these sort of live chat with their audience. And we got particularly strong in the sports vertical, particularly in soccer, actually. And so we found we were really good at that, and we were creating really good engagement. We had tens of thousands of daily active users trading hundreds of thousands of messages every day. But what we really struggled with was the monetization piece. So, if you ask people to tip or subscription, you're asking them to put a credit card in, and it's just a very slow process. And then it was like, okay, how do we keep tiers, make this unique? And so that was the challenge. That's what we've worked on for the last 3 years. We actually have done a lot of research. We've written up on the challenge for creators. We published that. But where we were with Flick Sports, the other app, and it's still in the App Store, was good. We were having real results in terms of building community, struggling on the monetization piece. And so when we found BitClout about 7 weeks ago, we said, actually, let's take this team, let's pause the work in the Flick Sport app and focus the team on building basically the most compelling native experience for using BitClout. And that's pretty much what you're looking at today.
Sorry, my mic went on and off there for a second.
That's okay.
So then at this point, the app you're building is to mimic the desktop experience, but for mobile, or is it an improvement?
So ultimately an improvement. Like the first step in the app development is we looked at BitClout.com, and we said, for all those users that are using BitClout.com, when they go onto their mobile, we want to be that mobile experience. And currently people are using like mobile web, which is like okay, but we want to make it a great native experience. And that's the first step in the process, which is whenever people go over to Flick, they go, this is a better experience. And so next week when we launch, we feel we're about 85% there. There's a couple of things that are not in it yet, like notifications. But of the kind of the basic actions of finding content, creating content, posting content, replying to it, that experience is actually a lot better.
All right. So this right here, you specialize in building disruptive social media products. There's another headline that you had earlier, and I'm not finding it on your site. You put it on a Clout earlier today, I think.
Yeah.
What did that say? Now, because I thought I was going to show it here.
Yeah. No, that was we were creating. Let me find out. I didn't write it, but I thought it was quite good.
Yeah, but I thought I saw it on your site here too.
Was this the ultimate? Was it the ultimate gateway to BitClout?
Yes, that's it.
Right.
And I've already written it into the start of the show, but
right. Yeah. So that's very much the vision. So first step is build a better reader for existing BitClout users. But here's the problem with BitClout, and anyone who's joined BitClout knows this problem really well. It is really hard to get on board. And it's really hard to sell your friends, because they get there and they're like, no, I go get Bitcoin to buy BitClout, to buy Creator Coin. And so step one, build the app for the audience that is there. But step two is fix that onboarding problem. Make it a really smooth process that if I say to a friend, hey, come and follow me on BitClout, they click a link, they create an account, they can buy my creator coin with US dollar, and then they are in the app. That's the next step.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like any other thing. You just can put in a credit card and get your points.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you on the back end are translating that to BitClout.
Correct. We can actually sell you BitClout.
Okay.
And
So does
it's
that
not,
mean you have
know,
an off ramp to it, or that you have another exchange?
We don't need to have an off ramp. We can just be an on ramp. Like the off ramps, I actually think the off ramps will exist in the next few weeks. But really, right today, we just need a simple on ramp, like a simple on ramp that, say, for example, Mr. Beast can just like tweet out to his followers and say, "Hey, if you buy $100 of my coin, I'm going to give you this unique content." And that on ramp should not involve them having to go to Coinbase, set up an account, wire it money, wait a week, buy Bitcoin, learn all the different parts of it, and then send that Bitcoin to BitClout, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It should basically involve them putting in their credit card, buying Mr. Beast coin, and they're in.
That's a kind of a game changer right there. I think that's what everybody's wanted. I think most people have wanted that for BitClout.
Yes.
It's easy to see why they did the Bitcoin connection, but
yeah. And the key thing to remember here, and the core team, actually, I've been pretty clear about this. BitClout.com is a proof of concept. It is for users that are familiar with crypto. It is not meant to be really a consumer application. And in 6 months' time, I wouldn't be surprised if BitClout.com doesn't really exist anymore, because applications like Flick have taken over the application layer. And that would be a really good thing.
So, and you're not the first person I've heard say that.
Mm-hmm.
But does that mean people even quit uttering the word BitClout? Like it's just a base layer that nobody even cares about? Or is there a culture here that's going to pervade?
No, I think the word, no, the coin itself is always going to be called BitClout, but I don't think the applications on top will necessarily be called BitClout.
So therefore, like when you say, if people said, if Flick became the new Twitter, then people would just talk about Flicks instead of clouts from now on.
Well, so we're getting into.
I'm making up my own words here, but
yeah, it's so there's a lot of different products here. Okay, so there is the actual application that people are using. That's number one. Number two is what do you call a post? People have been calling that a clout or a post, sometimes a tweet. And then there's the currency, which is a BitClout. As a unit of BitClout. Let me kind of go the simple ones. I think the currency will always be BitClout. I don't think that's going away. I think it'll always be called BitClout. We as an application would never try and call it something different. I think that'd be very confusing. Our application will be called Flick. It's actually the BitClout app as its tagline. And so I think that's true. And then I think there will be lots of other applications that will be called different things, and they'll probably focus on different aspects of the protocol. And then the question of what's a post called? I never really liked clout. I think I don't even know if we name it, but if we did, we'd probably call it a post.
Which in a way is what officially the platform calls it, I think.
It calls it post, right? Yeah.
As I recall, but all of us, early adopters started coming up with their own terminology. And, I actually recall on the first day or two that I was posting a picture of the platform used to say tweets are not available yet, or no, retweeting is not available yet.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's interesting. That's a Twitter word, and about a week later they changed it to reclouting. But
reclouds, yeah, that is interesting. The other thing I'd say about the application layer, and this is just Flick, but different applications are going to use different parts of the protocol, and some of them won't intend to be feature complete. So they might say, you know what, we've got diamonds. I don't want likes. Or they might say, Instagram and TikTok don't have retweets or reposts. We don't want them either. So that's one of the things is as we move away from BitClout.com, we have to be open to the fact that these are not, I think the best applications are going to have a vision of what they want and not just say, well, we'll try and replicate everything in the protocol. I think the successful ones will have a kind of a stronger vision of where they want to end up.
But will they drive to a specific method, or will it be kind of like it could be used however you want?
So there's always going to be a tension between like sort of founder vision or designer vision and community, what the community wants as such. And I always sort of think that the best solution is kind of a partnership between the two. So for example, hashtags were not created by Twitter, they were created by Twitter users. And then Twitter kind of adopted them. I'd say TikTok probably perfected them. But then there's other changes. I'm trying to think of some examples. There's many changes where users have hated the changes. And then over time of sort of like a classic one is newsfeed. When Facebook introduced newsfeed, users rebelled, they hated it. But in result, it was revolutionary. And so I think we'll see both. And then the other thing is applications are not going to go in the same direction. So some will go down a path that is maybe, will be saying, I want to replicate TikTok, and the others want to be, I want to replicate Twitter. Those will be totally different applications, but they'll use the same BitClout protocol.
So what have you, I'm going to ask questions now that are probably outside of my realm of understanding on the back end.
Sure.
How much do you have to think ahead? Right. It's not just thinking about user, what do they call it? UI, UX. How much are you having to think about actual hardware?
Hardware. So to be honest, software development now, fortunately, has made, like when I was first in software development, like you had owned your own servers that you put in co-location, and you had guys who went down to the rack and wired stuff up. It's not a really big part of development. Like you spin up an instance on AWS, or an alternative. So no, that's not really a big one.
But I guess still there are racks, even though they're in a data center, that have to be between what you're doing and the BitClout blockchain.
Well, you need to run a node. And so
but that's more than just what you're talking about. Could be you're renting out a lot of rack space to handle your node if you're owning the mobile space.
The fortunate thing about AWS is that the only person who has to worry about that is the CFO. And that you're running a lot of racks, you run a lot of hardware, it because you're getting a very big monthly bill. You're not really worried about actually provision. Well, sometimes it matters provision, but you're not worried about buying equipment and stacking it.
Right. Yeah. You're still going to have somebody making sure all the code and Dockers are running well and all that.
Yes. Yeah. And then there's a lot of that still internal, provisioning of hardware. When you're so for example, my last business, Fanduel, fantasy sports business, horrifically spiky business, where, we used to joke that on between 12 and 1 on a Sunday, just before football locked, it was like a denial of service attack. Like suddenly everybody comes in to change their lineup, and the servers that have all been sitting idle for six days a week suddenly just go, on fire. So we get a lot of experience in dealing with excessive demand.
Well, maybe you should help Coinbase out then.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's it's tough. It's tough when you suddenly see that sort of demand. It all hits you at the same time. Yeah, it is hard.
Yeah. So now there's another app that's out there, and I'm kicking myself because I was thinking about it earlier and I can't remember the name of it.
A mobile app?
Yes.
There's two. There's CloutFeed and
CloutFeed,
Cloudy.
And Cloudy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've spoken to the guys at Cloudy, and I'm not. I'll get to them in a moment, but the Clout Feed part was, first to market, so to speak.
Yeah.
But had a big roadblock with the identity part of this
Yes.
game.
Yeah, that was a real challenge for everyone.
So, what are you doing to overcome that?
Yeah, well, so that was a real issue before they built identity.BitClout. That's now in place, and so it's actually much easier now to do than it was, like, sort of, I think it was 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. But
And so we interface with our product. What we do when you come into Flick, you basically hit sign up, and we take you to a web view of identity.BitClout, and you're putting your seed phrase in there.
So tell me, because I'll confess that I'm still a little unclear on what identity.BitClout gets for me. That it
Right.
did, what that shift made for us. Because I think a lot of people are confused. So help us understand that.
Yeah. So what identity.BitClout is really a kind of an identity management tool. So that is sort of separate from the application. So they basically sort of take part of the protocol, and they give something that the applications can call and say, is this person, prove that this is the person who say they are, right? And so once you basically put your profile in there, your application, any application you can use, can go and check that this is the right person, that they have the right to access this money, to publish this content. And so it keeps it sort of somewhat separate from the application.
And through the API, also BitClout knows that you are indeed the legitimate owner of the account when you're interfacing with your app.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. Now, one of the things that sorry, I just want to cut you off, and this is true for all of the apps, is that we interface with identity.BitClout via a web view. So when people use the Flick app, they will have to put the seed phrase into that web view. Now, that web view is identity.BitClout. But some people are like, oh, wait a second, am I putting this in the Flick? And actually, you're not. You're putting it straight into identity.BitClout. Then Flick is interfacing with identity.BitClout to confirm that that is correct. It's not that you're actually putting into our app.
That's very important for people to understand, because there's still so much fear involved.
Absolutely.
Including from people like myself, because I'm not so determined to get on a mobile app that I'm willing to even risk it.
Absolutely.
I prefer other people to do it.
Yeah, it's full of scams. And, I personally have been defrauded of tens of thousands of dollars. I know, and, people should always be concerned about things involving security, because there are real risks there. So we're kind of being very clear. We're actually putting the software through an audit right now so that people can feel that it's secure. The other thing we're being very open about is who we are behind this project. Flick Inc. is a Delaware incorporated company. It's backed by very prominent venture capitalists. Myself, my co-founder, quite a active and prominent profile. So those are all just things to help give people security. But when we get the audit through, I think that'll help as well.
You bring up a good point, that you've started Fanduel, dealing with a lot of trust there.
Yes. Yeah. Like with Fanduel, we had, I'm trying to remember the amount of money we had under account, but we handled like $1.5 billion in transactions annually. Like we had hundreds of millions of dollars on account. So dealing with sort of the security of that, and protecting people's money was a really big part of our job there.
All right. So, we brought up Cloudy as well.
Yeah.
I had a nice little call with those guys just about something completely different from the podcast.
Right.
And got to speaking to one of their machine learning specialists or AI specialist, which I was really interested in knowing that they had that already. This was a month ago, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
And so they had already just said, well, we'll just start doing our own AI, not requiring any metadata from the blockchain at all.
Yeah.
Which I don't know enough about it to know, but I guess through, obviously machines are very adept at translating voice and
Hmm.
text and everything like that. So it seems natural that
Hmm.
a good AI programmer could start figuring out how to partition and filter
Hmm.
feeds for people
Yeah,
already. Are
yeah.
you employing any of that?
Not currently. Honestly, I don't think we yet really have the volume of content to be able to do that. The like if we take a step back, where's that deployed today that is like most interesting, where it's done best? And I think it's pretty clearly it's TikTok. Like TikTok is exceptional at finding out your interest and sharing you more content like that. And if you've ever spent any time on TikTok, it is quite a frightening how good they are at finding stuff you like and stuff that you would never even have said you liked. Like I didn't know that the stuff I really like uh, is stuff around barbecue. It's like rednecks driving trucks. It's all sort of it's whiskey. It's like I would never have written that into an application. I said I like that stuff, but I like that stuff. It seems. And yeah, so they're really good at that, and they know it because they see which content I'm interacting with, and I'm pausing on, and I'm obviously watching, um, and so that's really fascinating. So we definitely look at that, and we look at global today on BitClout, and it's a created feed. Somebody chooses it. It is not to my taste at all,
Right.
and I think a lot of other people feel the same. And so where we want to go and launch is, at the moment, we will actually just use the current curated feed. In time, we probably will build our own curated feed, but longer term, we definitely want to have a personalized feed that matches your interests. And the best way to do it is to look at what you currently look at and serve you content that is more of like that.
Like with TikTok, like using
Like
AI.
TikTok,
Yeah,
using
it's
AI,
it's
absolutely.
personally
Like, and it
curated. Yeah.
looking at, and TikTok has like thousands of data points. Like, how long did you spend on this? Like, how quick did you flick on it? Like, what did you come back on it? Did you save it? Did you go back and look at it again? How does that content relate to other content? So there's so many different things that it does, and you've no idea how it does it, but it is very, very good at it.
It makes me wonder if Facebook, for instance, would look at this and go, well, let's build on top of BitClout.
I don't think they ever would. I don't think. I remember somebody somebody once did a really interesting study of the refrigeration business. It might have been Guy Kazaki, and it was over 150 years. And he basically showed that the guys that that went up the Hudson and cut out blocks of ice and then floated them down the Hudson and then brought them into restaurants, because they literally did that. He said they never got into. They were in the refrigeration business, but none of them invented a refrigerator.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with Facebook. I think Facebook has got a business that throws off billions of dollars. It is very successful, and Bitcoin is very disruptive to them. Like, I don't think they look at it and go, "Wow, that's a great new business to be in." I think they think it's like this is potentially a risk to us, and
Yeah.
we kind of want to like throw FUD all over it. We certainly don't want to
Right.
be doing it because
Well,
and
I was only half
yeah.
serious when I asked that, but at the same time, the reason I asked it is because what I was really thinking was people will want to build Facebook and Twitter like experiences
Totally.
on this.
Oh, absolutely. And I
And
think
so
they already
therefore,
are.
why wouldn't Facebook or Twitter go ahead and do it?
So here we try to make a prediction on this. So I think Twitter is more interesting because I think Jack Dorsey is much deeper into crypto. I think he also he also appreciates like the decentralized nature of it, and I think he could quickly look at BitClout and go, "This is fascinating." I don't think he is quite a sort of egomaniac capitalist that Zuckerberg is. And so I could see him saying this is really interesting. I would struggle to see how he would uh, how he could blow up Twitter and use something like BitClout. So I could see something there. I just don't know how they would do it. With Facebook, I think it's pretty obvious. I think they would, I think they would like go to send the head of business development to call up the guy to like go buy it and get a bit of a shock. That
Yeah.
would be step one. And then this is their playbook. And then step two would be we might get a tweet from Diamond Hand saying just turned down like 4 billion from Zuckerberg. And then, then step two would be like, I'm going to kill it. And he would give it to that crappy new products division that he has. It throws out like clones of TikTok and Snap, and they would come up with various iterations. And, it would sit somewhere, between Facebook Portal and Facebook Libra.
Right.
I get, what I'm saying is I don't have a lot of excitement about it. I think one of the sad things about Facebook is, historically it was very innovative. Like, have we seen that in the last 10 years? Well, not really.
So I recall that when Diamond Hands released the nodes, so to speak, and in his writings talked about now you have full access to the fire hose. Imagine language specific nodes and interest specific nodes. And that got me thinking a lot about ideas that I might want to try out.
Yeah.
But doesn't it seem like, to me, it's either has to be that or TikTok, where just your behaviors and interests drive your experience, and there's no need for specific nodes to handle specific content.
Yeah, well, so nodes don't handle specific content, and nodes by definition have to be fully synced with every other node. So they will be a full replica of everything on the blockchain. What it does, though, it gives you kind of read-write access into the blockchain, and so you run your node. You can then say, well, actually, I'm going to create, or I'm going to I'm going to decide what sort of content that I'm going to whitelist on my application, and I can do that because I have a node. But my node is actually a complete copy of everything on the network.
Yes, but take your app, for instance. Couldn't you employ the AI to do all of that filtering and interest and language and everything else?
Yes, that's something we would want to do. So we would want to take, we want to surface all the content that is on the BitClout network within our app. We're not just content created within Flick. And then what we want to do is to be able to use AI to actually surface the stuff that is interesting to you.
Okay, so then at that rate, you really don't need specific nodes with specific interests.
No, what the nodes give you is the ability to read-write access to the network. But the nodes themselves are not specific to a vertical or
right. Yes, but what I'm saying is the layer on top of that, like you are, that's presenting the UI to people, can do all of that segregation.
Yes, yeah, the application layer. We and our users sort of help drive us. Like, this is the direction in which you want to go, and there's simple stuff like we are a native app on iOS. All of the content that, whereas on BitClout itself, we now have a blockchain that can have any sort of content on it, like any at all. Some of that won't be compliant with iOS rules, and there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to make sure that that is not in our app if we want to have a native application. So by definition, we're going to actually have to say there's certain things that we can't carry on our app if you want to have a native app, which we do.
So this is the part where people talk about decentralization and the sort of immutability of the blockchain and BitClout. So I think of the intermediaries that you've discussed, like Apple and AWS, and the list probably goes on and on. Does that therefore allow for that? There probably will always be a BitClout.com or something like it that is truly like, maybe it's BitClout.crypto. It's somewhere where it's untouchable.
Yeah, so I could see so I can see BitClout.com continue, and I'm totally speculating here. I'm not talking on behalf of the core team, but I could see them saying, well, let's give this over to an open source group who want to continue that in its kind of current guise. It is much more community driven and isn't driven by the edicts of, say, Apple, which any native app will be by definition. So I could see that happening.
Yeah, that's the scariest part for you, I bet, is dealing with Apple or Google.
It's you're definitely, what is it, dancing with elephants, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but that clearly is the part that where people get deplatformed.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. And they have a lot of power. And you have to, and even it's not like people see their, when they have their hard power where they just like shut stuff down, but you also have to know how to work with them, what sort of content they need, or what sort of functionality they need, and how to work with them getting through their approval process. That's all. It's all pretty difficult. It's not easy, but it's like we've as a company we've found, or Flick has had 3 years experience. Fanduel's building native apps for another 7 years, so we've kind of got there. But there is certain content you're probably never going to get on an app in the App Store.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, most mainstream content is fine, and so we have to live within that constraint.
How do you do that? I mean, how will you manage that? You almost have to
Well,
censor just to be compliant. Like you just
yeah,
try to
so
not run afoul of Apple.
there's certain kind of accepted ways in which, like, they don't expect you to moderate all content, like you sort of pre-approve all content. They do expect you to have, and when you see our app, like you have a report function, you have a block function. They do expect you, whenever somebody reports certain content, that that it won't be shown within the app if it doesn't follow iOS guidelines. They're not they're not so heavy-handed that if they ever see any content that breaks the guidelines, then they kick you off the App Store. But if you are willfully ignoring their guidelines, then you're going to have a problem.
Sure.
And so, yes, we have to make sure we staff up that someone's reading those reports and acting on it, and making sure that content is not generally getting available on the app.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking back to like Twitter a month ago or less, where they were asked by the Indian government to moderate any tweets that were in opposition of how they've handled the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
Do you worry about having to fall into that category at all?
Somewhat, yes. Like, I think that it's fortunate that there isn't one BitClout app like there is one Twitter app, and so your decision isn't as monumental. But if we became a very popular, say we become the #1 native application for BitClout, then like suddenly we're having to make what are in effect political decisions, and that's not easy. Like, everyone can criticize. The reason everyone's criticizing Twitter and Facebook is because these are really, really difficult decisions that, to some extent, shouldn't really be up to a private company to make.
Well, it's inevitable that you're going to have to deal with that.
Yeah. I've had that concern really since we started working on this, that if like you hope for success, but you also realize that if you are successful, like you hope you are, there's going to be some challenges that are going to come with it, and that's one of the biggest.
So do you foresee a landscape where there's thousands of apps like what you're building, or
I think there's going to, yes, on BitClout, yes, but I don't think there's going to be thousands that are identical. I think there's going to be thousands that are focused on very different things. Like, in the same way, like BitClout's a protocol, just like HTTP is a protocol, and there are millions of different websites. So I can absolutely see thousands or more than that are using BitClout as a protocol for social media.
Wow. So we'll end it with your prediction. What do you think BitClout's going to look like in a year, and in 5 years, and in 10 years?
I think in a year, I can see, like, I see a rapid improvement of onboarding. I see real influencer adoption. So I can see fairly rapid adoption there. It probably doesn't look dramatically different today. I think we're going to have, hundreds of sort of successful apps at that point. And by apps, I mean web apps, and maybe even thousands at that point. I think the longer term prediction is that BitClout itself becomes we know what BitClout's successful when people don't really talk about it anymore, because people don't really talk about HTTP, right?
Right.
It's even kind of hidden in my browser. I've just noticed I can't actually see that. You normally, certain browsers will display it. It's not even displayed anymore. Most people have no idea what it is. I could see within 5 years that BitClout is at that place where it is a technology that drives basically the social media architecture, but people don't even see it because it's just the plumbing.
I've kind of likened it to being the Ethereum of social.
Yes, I think that's a really good example.
Some people have said the Bitcoin of social, which I don't really know if there's any
yeah,
correlation.
but Ethereum still, though, it's still like, the thing is, the interface with Ethereum is still a lot of time is Ethereum.
Yeah.
I buy Ethereum and I use Ethereum to do other things with Ethereum. Whereas I actually think BitClout much quicker could become, really kind of pushed down, like, as a technology. And for, mainstream consumers who are not a technology that I am, like, I always think, when we are in technology, we think, okay, well, here we have the BitClout and here we have the application layer and then we have the customer experience. Users tend to think, user experience, and inside that is magic. They don't. They're not thinking about the AWS layer, the BitClout layer, and all the different layers. They just think magic within this, and it works or it doesn't. So, and that's whenever BitClout is just magic. That's when we know it's successful.
Yeah. I heard a person talking on Clubhouse one day about, here we are all enjoying and complaining about not BitClout, Clubhouse, this awesome tool we've all found, but we don't consider that there's like a stack of technologies 10 high that underwrites all of this. Like, it'd be impossible with all of this crazy technology. And we just look at it as, oh, it's just an app, that's cool. They designed an app.
Yeah. And
So,
then what's made it possible has been certainly like a modularization of technology, that you can build stacks on top of the other, build it going. And I've been in technology for 20 years, and back in 2000, it really was, you had to have your hardware in your co-location, and then you basically built all these layers on top. And even to do basic things involved a team of like sort of 30, 40 people. And now you can have a team of like 2 to 3 people, or even one person, building really impressive applications.
Yeah, we see that now already with BitClout. We run across developers that are just by themselves cranking out a tool that helps people. So, all right. So when does this really hit the App Store?
So it'll be live. We're hoping very early next week. So if you watch my account, I'm Nigel Eccles on BitClout. I'll basically announce it when we go live.
Awesome. So am I supposed to not tell anybody before then, or what do you want me to do?
Oh no, that's fine. But that's, you can keep an eye out for that account whenever we go live.
So it's called the Flick app.
FlickApp, or Flick.
Yeah, Flick. Awesome. Well, I can't wait to try it. And you've allayed some of my fears about the identity layer. I might actually put my seed phrases in there. I'm an avid proponent and try to teach people in the about crypto. Never ever put your seed phrase in anything except like a wallet recovery. But here we go. Entering a new world where we're having to do that some.
Well, that's, it's kind of the native to particularly native apps that you put it in once and then you're done. You're putting it into identity.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to give it a go, because it would be nice to interface with the BitClout on the go a little bit easier. And you foresee being able to add like photos from your phone?
Oh, like it's all there. It's all
awesome.
There.
Yeah,
I actually demonstrated a function just earlier today, which is when on a comments currently on BitClout, you can't stick in pictures, but if you use the FlickApp, you can. And I actually did that earlier today.
And will you be able to take a video with your phone and upload it?
Yeah, absolutely. You can just basically tap the video icon, brings up video, and you can make your video and you just post it straight in.
That's really going to drive usage, I think. I think it'll improve the experience of what we're seeing in the feeds. So I'm looking forward to that. Cool. So are you going to be in Miami for the first BitClout meetup?
I am indeed. I am arriving on Thursday, I think, and I'm staying through till Sunday.
Awesome. I'll be there myself, so we'll be able to
Great.
see some of these people in
In the flesh.
real life.
Yeah, that
I'm
would be
lucky.
great. Yeah.
I'm lucky. I at least get to do this podcast where I can see people over our YouTube feed, but we deal with people we just see avatars of all the time.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see beyond people's cloud
Yeah.
punks or
Yes.
BitClout punks.
Yes. I can say, I don't know if people are aware of, we talked about Clouded. That's from BitClout 500. I can actually say I've actually seen him and spoken to him.
Yeah,
But we associate it as being like this robot voice. Well,
that's right.
I finally met the guy. So cool. All right. Nigel
Excellent.
Eccles, man, I appreciate
Yes.
you taking the time with us.
Thank you.
It's Friday afternoon, so we probably have better things to do now.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.